Hello, my name is Douglas, and I'm going to be sharing a PowerPoint about wholeness, talking about where the PowerPoint came from, and the importance of wholeness. In grokking wholeness, what we're doing is we are highlighting that we need to understand a different reality, a new reality to get it through the next age. We're in deep, deep crisis right now, and the solutions are going to be about a new mindset, a new way of thinking. And I'm going to start this. This is the first of many presentations I'm going to be doing on this theme of wholeness. So let me get this going now. I'm going to share my screen. There it is. Boom. So I'm hoping this comes in clearly right now. Technology is not my highlight. Roots and Wings, Way of Wholeness. I'm going to tell you a bit about Roots and Wings to start off with Way of Wholeness. Way of Wholeness is a new way of being, as I said before. It's a way where we recognize that we are interconnected. We are connected with each other. We are connected with a living earth, and we are connected with Source, as each may know and name it. I'm going to talk about the genesis of this model, Roots and Wings, Way of Wholeness, in this first presentation. And I'll be referring to parts of it at different times in other presentations, going to be coming back to this. This is kind of a base for me, looking at Way of Wholeness, a new way of being. It comes about for two reasons. Number one is because of the poly crisis, the many crises that we're facing today, having to do with climate change, having to do with corrupt governments, not just the United States, worldwide. It has to do with poverty, economic disparity, all that. And what this will be presenting in these slides is the idea that the core problem of all these is the illusion of separation. The way of wholeness, a new mindset, is the solution to getting where we need to go to resolve all these problems. This is from our homepage on Grokking Wholeness, this model here, the flower, Journey of Wholeness. And if you notice on this, that they've got the mantra here, health, whole, holy, home. To me, it's a mantra for the age, and you'll be seeing the genesis of this also in my Roots and Wings model as I go along here. Professionally, I am a licensed mental health counselor. I just retired after 45 years in the profession. My first 7.5, almost 8 years, I worked in a high maintenance in a prison, in a full prison system with clients, prisoners, they call them prisoners that were adjudicated incompetent to stand trial by reason of insanity or not guilty by reason of insanity. After that, I worked for the next 23 years as a consultant on child abuse and neglect cases. I worked for Help a Child, the Child Protection Team program, as a consultant. As I say, I consulted with law enforcement, state attorney's office, child protection agency primarily. During this period, I developed a model. I was doing parenting classes, got a contract to do parenting classes while working at the child protection team for those years. And the parenting classes were called Roots and Wings, the Balance of Healthy Parenting. I did this for an agency for about 2 years, and this is how it was created, this Roots and Wings model that I'll be detailing as I go. I retired from the child protection field in the year 2010 after, as I say, 23 years of doing that. And then I incorporated a Center for Wellness. A Center for Wellness is a counseling center. It's a certified batterers intervention program. I became certified to do what's called BIP, Batterers Intervention Program. My clients were court ordered into my practice after being arrested for domestic violence. Or they were in the Child Protection Agency. Some have lost custody of their children, and they needed to go through this program in order to possibly get their children back into their custody. It's a 29-week group experience. They're court ordered for 29 weeks, 6.5 full months into groups. When I retired, as you note here, a little bit of ego stuff here. I put this on. I got the Leadership Award for the year. I was so very proud. It really brought me to tears. The Lola Blevins Leadership Award. It was presented to me in November of 2023 upon my retirement. This is special to me because Lola was a friend. She worked in the agencies, but she was so in tune with systems thinking. She didn't talk just about her agencies. She talked about how the system works, essentially, how we work together. And her thinking really influenced me. So I was very proud to get this award. Center for Wellness, I worked that for 15 years and I just retired last year. In 2024, I saw my last client after 15 years at a Center for Wellness. It was mandated by the courts that we use a power and control model in the state of Florida. So everybody that's trained to get certified in the state of Florida learns this. It's called actually the Duluth model because it was developed in Duluth, Minnesota. It's the power and control wheel and the equality wheel. It's used all over the state. It's used all over the United States. It's the most dominant model, widespread in the whole country. The power and control wheel, what this states essentially is that domestic violence is about power and control. The perpetrator wants control over the victim. And keep in mind, I had women's groups, men's groups, primarily men's group. I'd have 7 or 8 men's groups to 1 women's group. There were homosexuals in this. There were, I don't know if I had any trans peoples back then, frankly. I may have had 1 or 2 that I didn't know about. Frankly, I did not know about it. But there are different groups that get court, different peoples that can get court ordered into this. Again, this is about power and control over your partner. The many different ways we exert power and control. You can see in the power and control wheel there, we use intimidation, emotional abuse. We isolate them from their family, their friends. And then in response, we minimize, deny, and blame. These are ego defense mechanisms that the peoples in the groups use. Use children to gain power and control. Male privilege, economic abuse, and finally, coercion, pressuring your partner, threatening them to get your own way. What we teach them in groups is how to live in equality. So instead of using intimidation, they use non-threatening behavior. Instead of being emotionally abusive, they learn to treat their partner with respect, etc. This is the model that's used all over the state of Florida. I used it. I believe in it. I think it definitely has a core of truth in our culture, very much so. However, after a while, I began to realize that this is an incomplete model. It's not the full picture of domestic violence. A lot of the people that were perpetrators were victims during their childhood years. They have addictions to address. They have other emotional needs that they need to address. It's not only about power and control. So I wrote my own model. There's also the cultural influence, which was never addressed in this. It was kind of politically incorrect to address the culture. The perpetrator is accountable, held accountable for their actions, and we cannot blame our culture for it, which I agree with, but nevertheless, it neglects that aspect of culture. So again, I wrote my own model, not to replace this. I continued to use this model, but I wrote my own model called Roots and Wings, the Balance of Healthy. No, that was the one that I used before. It was the parenting groups, the Roots and Wings, the Balance of Healthy Parenting that I did for a couple years. I morphed that model and called it Roots and Wings, the Way of Wholeness, which you see in the middle there. Roots and Wings, Way of Wholeness. Remember, this was a 29-week group, so I'm not going to go over the details of this. Obviously, it's too long. It would take hours to go over the whole thing. I just want to go over the basis of this Roots and Wings, Way of Wholeness. You notice to start off with the yin yang symbol. This is the Taoist symbol. It's an ancient symbol, goes back 2,000 years. It's a symbol of balance and wholeness. Oftentimes, it's equated with our gender. Yin is feminine, yang is masculine. This is historical, that's been equated with. However, I disagree with that. In groups, what we were learning is that we are each a balance. Every single person you will meet is a balance of yin and yang energies and personality traits, all of us. The yin in my model is our receptive energies and personality traits. It's our aspect of being. It's our aspect of nature. It's also our essence, the yin aspect. The yang aspect is our active aspect. These are our active energies and personality traits, our aspect of doing and having as opposed to being and nature. This is our ego as opposed to being in our essence. Neither one of them is right or wrong. It's the balance, again, that makes this important, that we have balance. In our culture, we are yang dominant. Not just in American culture, worldwide, there's yang dominance. And I'm going to say men in this instance, what the men in the group are learning is how to embrace their yin energies and personality traits in order to be in a healthy relationship. This is our aspect of being. It's being receptive. So this is a start of the teaching in the groups. Expanding it now. That was the horizontal axis between our yin and yang energies and personality traits. There's also a vertical axis in the model between our roots and our wings. Our roots is our sense of connection. It's our connection with each other, with the living earth, and with source, as anybody may know and name it. It's our connection. We are connected. We are interconnected. Balancing that, though, we have our authentic power, our individuality. It's our hobbies, what gives us energy, what really excites us, what we're good at, our passions, our authentic power. This sets up the structure of the model. There's 4 quadrants. There's a yin and yang of roots and a yin and yang of wings. The yin aspect of roots is love, as you see in the bottom left of the quadrants there. The yin aspect is love. That's balanced with the yang aspect of roots, which is stability. I'll give you a good example of this just so make it clear. In the groups, many of the clients love their children deeply, but there was no stability in the home. There was no structure, no organization. There's also a yin and yang of wings. The yang, going around this model, as you notice, counterclockwise, the yang of wings is our control, having control. And then the yin of wings is surrender, being able to surrender. This is the surrender. Oops, I got to go backwards. Sorry. This is a health related model. My clients, many in our culture, it wasn't just people court ordered, many in our culture have been wounded growing up in one or more of these four quadrants. I believe personally that the worst wounding comes in the yin of roots in the quadrant of love. Growing up in a home where you don't feel cared for, you don't feel special, you don't have anybody in there telling us you're wonderful. That's a very deep wound to our identity structure. The yang of roots, stability. Many of my clients were raised in homes where there were addiction. There was no structure. There was fear in the home. They did not have that stability. They did not have the yang of roots growing up. The yang of wings, again, going counterclockwise. The yang of wings is our ability to control our lives. Many people grow up and they're not allowed to have their individuality. They're not allowed to be authentic, who they really are. The parents are trying to shape them into whom they want to be, and they've internalized that. They've internalized that they are not in control over their own lives. They cannot be authentic. And finally, much wounding in surrender. Kind of a gender stereotype here, especially little boys. When they surrender, they're looked at as being tender. They're looking at surrender as loss or defeat. And that's not at all what this is about, not at all. When we surrender, as I taught people in groups, we win. We are able to win when we're able to make that choice. I surrender. All healing of wounds, as you see in the model here, begins in the quadrants of surrender and love. All healing begins in these quadrants. Now we progress into this. When we're able to surrender, when we're able to love dearly and deeply, we are able to access our higher power. Whatever you individually, I don't teach a religion. This is not at all a religious curriculum, not at all. You could be any religion or no religion and still feel comfortable in the course that I taught. Higher power, for those familiar with 12-step work, we recognize in the second step that I accept that there's a higher power that's going to help me to heal. We'll learn to co-create our reality, our lives, our destiny. We co-create with our partners, with others, and with Source. Again, as each may know and name it, we are able to co-create our destiny. Coherence, I have a whole chapter, I do a whole lesson plan on coherence. It's working efficiently, all parts of the system working together. We achieve coherence. I'm not going to get into the details of these right now. Synchronicity. Synchronicity is a great term. Many of us have experienced what may be thought of as coincidence, but it was meaningful. It had meaning to us. It wasn't just a coincidence. The language of the universe, in my mind, what I teach is synchronicity, making things happen for our good, for a learning experience. When we're able to surrender and love, we access what's called the noetic experience, the experience of our oneness, our interconnectedness. Again, I have another whole PowerPoint, another presentation I'll be doing on the noetic experience at a later date. We access mind, consciousness, which is different than the brain. And finally, we're able to access spirit, as each may know and name it. And the field, what we call this in science is the field, the quantum field, the field of all possibilities, beyond the analytic, beyond logical. We could access that heart field and have choices in our life. So this is surrender. When we're able to surrender, then we're able to grow into our wholeness. Health, whole, holy, home, the mantra. I'm going to read this from Navigating Home, Restoring Wholeness with Earth Together from the Sacred Evolutionary Dowsing Consortium. And I want to thank Shelley for this book. Shelley Darling. It's just a magnificent book. I highly recommend it. Home is more than a physical place. It's a journey of the heart and spirit, both within and outside us. To truly navigate home, we must be present, fully mindful, and willing to transform our personal and cultural traumas, opening the way for our collective healing. And this is where the model now is going to morph into my next and final chapter of life. I retired last year, as I said, 2024, but I'm bringing this model forth and elaborating it into the future to address our collective healing. I've added to this model, you'll see it in color here, in red. Part of the yang aspect is our sacredness, being sacred. And part of the yin is activism. Also, creativity is part of the yin aspect. So we have sacred activism going forth into the future, which I'll be talking a lot about in future slides, in future presentations. I've also added other words in here. Under the yin aspect is metta, which is compassion. I'm bringing in a little bit of Hinduism, a little bit of Buddhism into this. The metta is compassion. And in our yang aspect, dharma, which is our purpose. I'll be talking a lot about those in our collective consciousness, growing into our wholeness, not just as individuals anymore, but growing into our wholeness now as a species. This is our next evolutionary thrust when we're going to be evolving to Homo noeticus, or in the words of my mentor of the past, Homo universalis. Barbara Marx Hubbard in Conscious Evolution talked about Homo universalis. This is where we're going in this series of presentations I'll be doing. One part I left out to cover it all, and that part is authentic power. Remember, in the state of Florida, it's mandated by law that we use a power and control model. This is the true relationship now between power and control. This is also considered a power and control model. That's why I was able to use this. Looking at authentic power, which is your balance between your control and your surrender. I don't want any of my clients to give up their control, to give up their ability to control their lives, make good decisions, what they need. But we balance the control with our ability to surrender. This again is part of wholeness. We need to be able to consult our higher power, to be able to co-create our lives. Authentic power. I learned about authentic power from another of my mentors, Gary Zukav. He wrote his first book over 30 years ago on quantum physics. It was called The Dancing Woolly Masters. It was brilliant, just brilliant. He was one of the first writers that was really putting quantum physics in terms that we could understand it. His second book was The Seat of the Soul. That's his most famous book, The Seat of the Soul. And then he wrote Spiritual Partnership. And by the way, when he wrote Seat of the Soul, he was invited to be a speaker on the Oprah Winfrey Show. Oprah Winfrey later credited him with being the person to wake her up to her spirituality. Gary has been on the Oprah Winfrey show more than any other person in the history of the show. This book that I have up there, as a matter of fact, is the 25th anniversary edition. And the preface to the book was written by Oprah Winfrey and Maya Angelou. And I go into that more in the groups. I'm not going to get into that, but that's how important this book is. I was introduced to Authentic Power by Gary. Here's 2 quotes from the book. No understanding of evolution is adequate that does not have at its core that we are on a journey toward authentic power, and that authentic empowerment is the goal of our evolutionary process. It's the purpose of our being. We are evolving from a species that pursues external power into a species that pursues authentic power. We are evolving from 5-sensory humans into multi-sensory humans. From the perception of the 5-sensory human, we are alone in a universe that is physical. From the perception of the multisensory human, we are never alone. And the universe is alive, conscious, intelligent, and compassionate. Certainly, the peoples in my group had never heard this information before. This is radical information that most people in our culture do not know. This is part of the news story that's going to take us into the future, where we have a chance to evolve, a chance to live together in peace. And these is where my presentations will go into the future to elaborate on these kind of topics. The universe is alive, conscious, intelligent, and compassionate. I'm going to kind of seed your interest, your curiosity now. Just show you a couple books that I'll be going over in lots of detail in the future. The Undivided Universe by David Bohm, a great, great physicist. The Conscious Universe by Dean Radin, who is the chief scientific officer at the Noetic Institute of Noetic Sciences. I mentioned the Noetic experience. The Living Universe. So the undivided universe, the conscious universe, the living universe, the self-aware universe, the sacred universe, the playful universe. There's a new story that's emerging on wholeness, and we need to know this new story to advance as a species, to grow into our wholeness. A couple other books, and then I'll end this presentation for now. Oops. The non-local universe, the conscious universe, the holographic universe. I forgot to put those in. And then the other 2 books I'm going to mention that I'll be talking about in detail in the future. The Holomovement. I mentioned David Bohm before, the physicist, came up with the Holomovement. We are, as a species, growing toward wholeness. Like a plant grows toward the sun, heliotropic, we as humans are holotropic. We are moving naturally toward wholeness. The Holomovement is embracing our collective purpose to unite humanity. And finally, one of the books that woke me up, he was the first president of the Institute of Noetic Science, Willis Harman, Global Mind Change. So that's where I'm going in the future with these presentations. This is a journey of wholeness. We need this now as a species. We need to grow up as a species into our wholeness, beyond this illusion of separation that's the root cause, to grok wholeness, to understand it at a very deep heart level, not just with the head. It's not a cognitive learning. It's embodying this and then being able to apply this information in our lives. Thank you so much for your time and listening. Looking forward to being with you again. Namaste. Thank you so much. I ended up every one of my groups for 23 years with the sacred Namaste. And I taught what it means that the God, or whatever you want to call it, that higher power within me honors, recognizes you, the higher power within you. Every group I ended for 23 years with Namaste. Thank you.